So here we go with the box office top 10, brought to you as ever by our very good friends at Comscore Movies, who've done all the hard work for us. Thank you very much, Comscore Movies. Number 67, In Flames. Not a Slade movie, but, Mark,
it was Pakistan's entry for the best foreign language, the best international feature, as they now call it. And it's very much like Babak Amri's Under the Shadow. It's a horror movie on the front of it, but actually what it really is a film about patriarchy and oppression, which is just telling its story through the use of supernatural motifs. And I thought it was very powerful.
Number 43 is Horde,
which is a great British movie that, I mean, I know it's a hard view, and I can, obviously it's not packing out the multiplexes, but it is really, really well worth seeing. It's got great performances. It's dark, it's difficult, but I think it's also got kind of a really transcendent edge to it. I think it's something really special. I mean, I said it's not an easy film, but it's not meant to be.
Number 14 here, number 11 in the States is Tarot. Got an email here from Thomas Caffrey, who says, I recently had the distinct pleasure of watching the latest horror film Tarot in a packed cinema in small town Ireland. Following a series of decent to very enjoyable horrors this year, such as Immaculate, Late Night with the Devil and Ex-Humor, I was looking forward to seeing this on the big screen. We were a few minutes late on account of traffic, so we hurriedly collected our tickets, settled into our seats, and caught the last few moments of a Mad Max trailer before the lights dimmed and the film began. Any excitement for the film dissipated with the sudden arrival of a bunch of loud and rowdy teenagers, spilling popcorn, laughing, poking fun at the film, all the usual annoyances. By the end of the film, I was thankful for the distraction they provided. Absolutely moronic film, and felt like a horror made by filmmakers indifferent or indeed hostile to the genre. Cliched characters, off-screen deaths, and apparently the lighting crew forgot to show up too. Poor stuff, but at least Olwen Ferrere had a good time with her role. Please avoid Mark, which, Thomas Caffrey, it sounds as though Mark has.
I have managed to do that, despite the fact that I love Olwen Ferrere, but yes, I have managed to avoid it. So thank you for confirming me in doing that.
Olwen Ferrere, I just had to check the pronunciation because she's Irish of Breton parents. So there's two accents working in her surname, but which is rare for someone from Ireland. So anyway, so I was just checking, but I think we got that.
Okay,
right.
so it is Ferrere, not Ferrere, is it?
No, it's Ferrere. Yes, because there's an e acute at the end.
Okay.
So that's
okay. She is brilliant, though.
Number 10 here, number 9 in the States is Back to Black. Still there.
Solid pop biopic, and I think it's now playing in America. But it's done so much better than anyone expected. So good for it.
Yeah, it is. As I said, it's number 9 in America, so it's doing fine.
Yeah.
9 here, not charted in America, is Twilight of the Warriors Walled In.
Okay, so haven't seen this Chinese film based on the novel City of Darkness. If anyone has seen it, write in and let me know. It wasn't shown to me, so I haven't seen it.
Correspondence at KermodeandMayo.com. I think the same applies to Turbo at number 8.
Again, this is Malayan language Indian action comedy. Again, if you've seen that, let me know. Just correcting myself, Twilight of the Warriors is a 2024 Hong Kong neo-noir martial arts crime action film, which covers a huge amount of bases.
Number 7 here, number 8 in the States is Challengers,
which I really liked, and everyone I know who's seen it seems to have really, really enjoyed it. And Josh O'Connor is fantastic in it, but don't forget that Josh O'Connor is also fantastic in La Chimera, which is playing in your local art house cinemas, and if you have a chance to see it on the big screen, do.
6 here, 6 in America is The Strangers, Chapter 1.
We have Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 coming. They decided that it wasn't a good idea to show them to the press.
5 here, 5 in the States is The Fall Guy.
Which, we keep being told has underperformed hugely because the IP wasn't as recognisable as anybody thought it was meant to. I'm not sure that that's the issue. I mean, I thought it was funny. I enjoyed it, and I liked the chemistry between the two leads. But I do know people who've seen it and have just been completely left cold by it, which just surprises me because I thought it was really perfect popcorn fun.
Number 4 is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Very good second hour, slow first hour. However, Child 2 said to me, "You're completely wrong," which is not the first time Child 2 has said that. went to see it and really liked the first hour, really liked the fact that for the first hour it's just world building. So, hey, what do I know?
Number 3 here, also 3 in the States, is If. So an email from Martin in Manchester. Dear If and Iffy, long-term listener but first-time emailer. After listening to your review of the new John Krasinski film, I felt compelled to write to you about my childhood experience of imaginary friendship. This is a really great email, which this film, whether you love it or are indifferent to it, has certainly stimulated. We wouldn't have got here, I think, without John Krasinski. I was, says Martin, and still am, an only child. And so when, at the age of 2, I started telling my parents about a new imaginary friend who went by the name of Glockweed, they weren't too worried, as it's a very common thing for kids to have, especially children without siblings. However, when Glockweed's brother, Boggan, also began to appear in my daily reports, followed quickly by his mum and dad, Boola and Tad, and finally Baby Small and Desi the dog. They had cause to raise an eyebrow or two. We now had an entire imaginary family of 6 staying with us in our very real house in Belfast. My parents have regaled me, my very understanding fiancée Rachel, with various tales of these characters over the years. Like the time my mum asked me to eat some lunch, she placed before me on the high chair and I refused to eat it. So in desperation, she said, well, would Boggan like some then? On another occasion, my Aunt Vivian, also a proud member of this parish, was babysitting me and jokingly asked where my invisible friends were tonight. I slowly pointed to a space just beside her and said, they're there. I don't know whether he did it in that voice. Finally, one morning after they had inquired about what the gang had been up to recently, I told my parents in a cheery voice, oh, Baby Small is dead.
What?
Sadly, I myself have no memories of my fictional family, but thanks to my folks, tales of their adventures live on, and I've kept Glockweed's name alive by using it as the moniker I released my music under. Unsurprisingly, no one else has claimed it. Tickety-tong down with the Nazis and up with imaginary friends, their families, and indeed their dogs. I would love to know if any of our church have had not just imaginary friends, but is Martin alone in having like an entire family staying with them? That's extraordinary, don't you think?
Yeah, it is extraordinary. I also think what's extraordinary is what happened to that family and the way in which he recounts that story. And when you did the, where are they? They're just there. You did it in the same voice that you do. I'm behind your bins.
Oh, yeah.
So I wonder whether somehow that imaginary family is somehow connected with the imaginary family that you have in your head that lives behind your bins.
That's also true. I wonder if Martin is right that it's also very common. It would make sense, I suppose, for single children without any siblings to have imaginary members of the family. Well, it didn't come up with John Krasinski, but if that's true. And if you also had a family like Glockweed and what were they all called? Boggan, Boola, Tad, Baby Small and Desi the dog. Anyway, if anyone has stories like that, correspondence@kermodeandmayo.com. Number 2 here, number 1 in the States is Furiosa. Did you want to say anything on If? I didn't even offer you the opportunity there to just chip in on the story.
No, I mean, honestly, I think it's one of those cases in which the correspondence is more interesting than the film. I like the idea of the film, but I think the film lacks magic. I think the film is slightly disappointing, but it has provoked a very interesting conversation about, imaginary friends. So for that, I'll forgive it everything.
Number 1 in the States. Number 2 here is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Matthew says, I really enjoyed George Miller's latest, especially Chris Hemsworth getting to stretch his acting legs in a way we've not seen at all from him. But one thing really bugged me, and that's the playing of scenes from Fury Road at the end, which I think is quite surprising. But anyway, all it did, says Matthew, is just show off how grungy and great Fury Road looked and served only to highlight how digital and clean this looked. I could call out so many scenes using digital doubles, excessive green screen, CG bullets, composite shots that stood out a mile. One that really stood out was Furiosa and Mother simply slowly riding a bike toward a camera through a rock formation. It just looked so odd, like the bike wasn't even moving. So much of this movie looked dead behind the eyes compared to the frenetic in your face the frenetic in-your-face action of Fury Road. I was struggling to pinpoint why exactly, so I looked it up, and apparently it's a different cinematographer. The one who did all the Mad Max movies retired and couldn't do this one too, which is why I imagine it looks, in quotes, worse, or at least part of the reason. Also, side note, how exactly do you end up with an American accent after being surrounded by Australians from childhood? Anyway, down with stuff and up with stuff. Matthew on Furiosa Mad Max Saga at number 2.
I mean, I like Furiosa very much. I don't think it did look bad. I thought it looked great, actually. I thought the point that you made when you were talking to George Miller was that the sound does a huge amount of work in it. And actually, we may later on in the show return to the subject of the way in which sound can change what you see. I didn't think it looked bad. I mean, all the criticisms that you have, they all sound like, you've been watching very attentively, and you've made very specific criticisms of them. I have to confess, those things didn't bother me, and I think they didn't bother me because I was kind of swept up in it, and I liked it. But this does come, we used to have a thing about the hill upon which you will die. It is true that if something about the visual starts to bug you, then the movie won't involve you in its world. And the one thing I would say about Furiosa is it does offer you many moments in which, if you are skeptical about it, you can go, in the words of Friedkin, hang on a minute. And that's the thing that Fury Road doesn't do. But the end, I thought the end montage of Fury Road didn't bother me. Did it bother you, Simon? Did it make you feel disappointed in what had gone before?
No, not really, because I thought it was just saying this is where the story goes next, and it was a reminder about how great Charlize Theron was. There was one moment very early on when I thought the CG was a little bit clunky, and then I forgot all about it. So I was completely swept up. So I really enjoyed it. And Matthew says at the beginning, I really enjoyed the film. So there's a lot to enjoy. But you're right. He was just annoyed by the way it looked. Anyway, it's not number 1 because the Garfield movie is at number 1. I don't have anything on it.
No, but exactly. And in a way, none of us do. Somebody said to me, I heard your review of Garfield. You talked for 5 minutes about the Bill Murray Garfield, and you said, and then this one's got Chris Pratt. And I said, well, in a way, that's kind of it. I mean, it's not anything other than some animated stuff and some famous actors doing the voice cast stuff. And the most interesting thing about the whole Garfield thing is that an earlier incarnation of it was voiced by Bill Murray, who then in an interview said that he did it because he thought it was the other Cohen. He thought it wasn't Joel Cohen, it was Joel Cohen, as opposed to Ethan Cohen and Eton Cohen. That's more interesting than anything in the film. But it's half term, so it's a Garfield movie. Here we go. Nobody remembers the Fall Guy. Everyone knows what Garfield is.
Okay. All right. So maybe Mad Max will be number 1 next week because half term will be over. Oh, well, who knows? We'll find out. Stay tuned for next week's episode.
Well, one would hope so.